Maybe again.
Yeah,
so my plan is, I'm just going to minimize the videos. My plan is just to talk about every issue here, all 30 issues in the, I guess 31 issues in here. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just introducing the context for each of them. Actually, I have a little snippet. Yes, we've changed something and doesn't work anymore. Okay, that's fine. I'm actually not sure how we ended up with 31, so I'm not sure what the 31st issue is. Somebody may have added something, but we'll figure that out. Okay, so this first item here is the ability to render a merged GitLab CIML via UI. These aren't in any particular order. Yeah, in fact, it's just sorted by a created date. It's not super interesting. So yeah, rendering a merged GitLab CIML. What this does is it's for, I think we actually talked about this one a little bit maybe already, but what this is one of the things that's difficult when troubleshooting is if you have a bunch of includes. You may be pulling in a file that pulls in another file that pulls in another file, and it's hard to know exactly what you're dealing with when it comes to that. We're adding some nice visualization tools that will help with this separately from this, but this is just a button or some way to download back a merged GitLab CIML. This will already be possible via the API, so this is just adding it to the UX in some way. Yeah, and that's all that is. And what that would let you do is just take a look at the file and make sure it's as you expected. So it's kind of like part of the troubleshooting process. Feel free to jump in at any point if I go quickly. I tend to go too quickly, so I'll need your help if I am. Automatically load and validate the default config within the CI Lint tool. So yeah, this is one of the issues with the Linter tool today is that if you go to the Linter for a project, it just gives you a blank page. And so you sort of all the time have to copy and paste the contents of your GitLab CIML in there. So what this change does is it'll make it so that whenever you go to the lint, it pre-populates it with the GitLab CIML that's there, that's checked into the project, and it also validates it once. So you know, if you're still copying and pasting something different in there, you can still do that, and it still takes the same amount of time. But if you're actually validating the GitLab CIML or trying something out, then it will be pre-populated, which will be a nicer experience. In the linter as well, we recently added warnings, and sometimes depending on the pipeline configuration, there can be one warning that's repeated dozens or maybe even 100 times or something like that. And there's no way to permanently dismiss those. So this is just adding a little Xbox to the warning so that you as a user could permanently disable that warning. You'll never see it again if you don't want to. Allow for indicating a DAG job should block on another job separate from allow failure. So in the DAG, there's, you know, the default behavior is that if you say that you need another job, it will wait for it. Or I'm sorry, if it's, so this is only related to manual jobs. If you need a manual job, it won't wait for it. It'll just kind of continue on separate from allow failure. What this does is it gives you this option in the syntax here to be able to say, even if allow failure is set and it's a manual job, I want this to block and wait for it. There was previously no way to structure that. The reason that you might do something like that is that if you have some commands that run behind a manual job, and you basically want to set up the whole tree to be manual, but triggered by this one manual thing. This will give you the syntax that you need to do that. And we have a similar one. That's not next, but we'll come to a similar one in a bit that you'll see is whether it's optional or not. Render CI lint warnings and the API responses. So this is just adding warnings to the API. They were not there yet because we added them incrementally to the UI first. So this is related to the one where we said we would be dismissing warnings, allow for permanently dismissing them. This is improving the way that they're displayed in the first place, so that if you do have 100 of the same warnings, then they're not displayed as 100 different lines. So this will also improve the experience there. And it doesn't look like we have updated designs in here yet, but I think what we're doing is there'll be like a drop down here and you can expand it if they're all the same warning. This is a bug, manual run of CI master fails with a 500 error. So yeah, we should just fix that bug. We have this manual run pipeline thing. Where you can enter variables and you can choose which branch you want. And it's just over here if you go to pipelines, and then there's like a run button over the top right. So in some cases we're showing a 500. This is simply just fixing that bug. This is a really nice one. So bringing some Dag Insights into the pipeline view. So you probably saw that we released this Dag pipeline recently, or the pipeline view recently. And it shows the nice way that things are wired together. But the regular pipeline view for running pipeline just still looked like it had the columns here. So the insights that we're bringing in are the colors representing the stage, and then this wire here, which you couldn't see before that job 3 was connected to job 1. So now it's clear that that's the case. This is a pretty cool improvement. So far, so good. Everything, everybody?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay, great. Reevaluating the colors for the use of the DAG. So this is the DAG pipeline view that I was talking about. This is very hard to follow for colorblind people. So Nadia is working on some colors and perhaps some visual indicators when things overlap each other, so that this is easier to process if you are colorblind. It's honestly kind of hard to process even if you're not colorblind with the way the colors blur together, but yeah, so this is just taking some of the feedback that we got from the DAG feedback issue and improving it in that way. We talked about this one already, which is the authoring funnel. So how long it takes and how many tries it takes for somebody to get to their first screen pipeline. So I won't go into that anymore, but I'm excited to have this data. Link to docs for each error warning raised during pipeline creation. Yeah, so this is a general improvement to the way warnings work in the linter. Actually, this is during pipeline creation, so this is not during the linter, but this is the error that you get when a pipeline is created. We're going to link to the documentation every time we show these errors. So instead of just showing an error that you then have to go figure out, and some of these error messages are a little bit hard to understand, we'll link directly to the documentation that's relevant for that error, which should hopefully help people get, if we go back to that new authoring metric that we're tracking, get to success more quickly and in fewer tries.
By the way, I see that in this error, there is also, can you go back? There's also a suggestion to go to the CI linter. Do you have a link to the CI linter as well?
Yeah, that's actually discussed down here somewhere. This one is still in design, and that's one of the things that Nadia is looking at right now. But it's a great question. She had the exact same question. And if we make this a link to the linter, and then it's auto-populated and auto-validates, then you'll be able to get more information right away, so you can see how these things are connected.
Yeah.
This is a bug. It's not, in some cases, properly linting the Gitlab CI YAML. So this is just fixing that. Looks like it's related to local include. So maybe this is related to it having the, not having the project context when it's linting via the API, which it needs to know in order to find the local file that's part of that project. So yeah, just fixing that. We have a few issues we'll come across. This is the first one where artifacts for child pipelines is something that we want to improve the way they work. Right now, every pipeline has its own artifacts. They're not kind of brought up the hierarchy to the parent. So if you've got, a parent pipeline that starts 10 different jobs or 10 different pipelines, each that build a different component, and each of those runs a code quality test, for example, you have to go into each of those 10 child pipelines in order to find those results. So we're working on several issues, one of which this is one of, to bring that context back up to the parents so that you don't have to do that. This is adding the linter to the Web Ide. So several issues we've been releasing lately have been around improving the Web Ide experience. And so this is the Web Ide experience specifically when you're editing a Gitlab CI YAML. And so this is adding a validate tab, which would have the linter inside of it, so you don't have to go into a second place in the first place if you're using the Web Ide to edit your Gitlab CI YAML. Artifacts not down. So this is another related one to artifacts not showing up on the child pipelines, and this one is more of a bug, and we're fixing it at the same time in order to improve the overall experience here. Also related to child pipelines, right now, if you cancel the parent, the children keep running. So that's pretty much never intended or what people want. If they cancel a parent, they want to cancel the children that the parent started. So this cascades now cancellations to child pipelines as well. Let's see, workflow rules. This is another bug, is not working properly with triggered pipelines and the way the variables are passed. This fixes that. Cannot include a downstream pipeline with include file. So this is also related to child pipelines. What we document and the way it should work, this is a bug again, is that you can use any of the include syntax to define how your child pipeline works. So the child pipeline needs some GitLab CI YAML in order to start itself, to know what to run. And so we use the include syntax to say, you can assemble that YAML file with includes just like you could the parent pipeline. And one of the keywords, include file, is not working. So this is simply fixing that so that include file also works. Main pipeline stuck in pending status if it triggers a child pipeline without strategy depends. When we talked about the overall things that we were working on for pipeline authoring, one of the things I talked about was overall processing and how and fixing edge cases related to the DAG in particular, but also related to child pipelines. With the DAG, with child pipelines, we've had a few edge cases, and typically what happens is pipelines get stuck in pending forever, or they get stuck in block when that's not really what you intended. So we have several issues, bug issues like these ones that are around resolving one or more of those edge cases, and this is one of those. So if you don't use a depend strategy, it should automatically still work with the correct default pipeline, and so it shouldn't ever get stuck in pending status. Nothing should ever get really stuck in pending status indefinitely. So this is fixing that. When manual within triggered pipelines. So right now you can't use the when manual keyword on a triggered pipeline, which would give you the ability to only run it when you press play. That was just done for iteration reasons. This is now adding that so that you can have a triggered pipeline start manually using existing keywords. Okay, oh wow, that was quick. That was the first 20 issues here. So far, so good. While I open up this next set of 11.
Yeah.
You can see the threads that we're looking at here are very much related to those ones that I talked about in the direction page update that we did. There's a ton of UX improvements. There's a ton of maturing DAG rules and child parent pipelines. And then there's just fixing important bugs. Actually, mostly that are related to those topics is what we've got. It's really nice right now because everything that we're working on in this area is very much related to driving the vision forward, particularly around improving the user experience. Oh, this we saw, so I must be in a different sort. Let me go back and correct that. Put this back by created date, and then we should get a different set of 11 items on the back page here. Did Nadia join the call, by the way?
Yeah, she's here.
Okay, great. Hey, Nadia.
Yeah.
I didn't see you
Hey.
join, so I was curious. My little
Oh,
pool
sure.
of people is minimized.
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Is all this making sense to you too?
Yeah, totally makes sense. I've been diving into issues for a few days now, so I've seen most of these actually, but it really helps to have some extra context around them.
Yeah, and please do ask questions. If I tend to go fast by nature, but I'm always happy to explain and slow down and all that stuff.
Sure, thanks.
Child parent pipeline artifacts. This is another one. This is another bug related to the download of artifacts from child pipelines. So just cleaning that up. It's you could argue it's an edge case or not, but it's just something that we didn't cover initially or that we missed initially. And so now we're iterating towards fixing some of these bugs. We have the Gitlab Ciemo linter timing out with less than 50 includes. Timeout isn't related to the number of includes, but I think the person, when they created this issue, just mentioned that to highlight that it's kind of a normal use case. Recently, though, well, recently, 8 months ago, we added a new timeout just to say, and I don't actually know what the timeout is, but we'll find out as we're investigating this issue, that there's like a maximum amount of time before we just give up if there's too many includes. And so the idea is that it just prevents it running for minutes trying to fetch includes. But we may need to just slightly increase the timeout a little bit in order to allow for valid use cases. And that's what this is. So it's just investigating that, potentially increasing it a little bit, or looking at maybe another potential solution to solve this problem for people, because we shouldn't be running into like the system level timeouts based on normal real people's usages. Support variables and rules changes, an improvement to rules to allow for using a variable here specifically, so that you could say, your Helm-dir, for example, is a variable, and then mix that in with the rest of a normal path. There's some questions around escaping that we're figuring out with engineering. There's a discussion down here with Jay Goish. But for the most part, this is pretty clear. And right now, you just have to hard code your Helm directory here in order to detect changes in that directory, which obviously more flexibility with variables, more reuse of variables is nice.
So what does the changes do?
Yeah, the changes keyword. So this is for if there's changes to any files within that folder. So if you have a folder that contains images or something, and you only want to run a job that resizes images if there's a change to an image, you could say, run this job only if there's changes in my images folder.
Okay, cool, makes sense.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for asking. Retry entire pipeline and retry failed jobs capability for trigger jobs. So this is for child parent pipeline jobs again. So when you run a child as part of a pipeline, so I'm not sure which one maps to which. We recently improved the UX for this so that you can tell which one goes with it. I guess it's this one probably. So there's this job here, which is a trigger for a downstream job here. And people want to be able to retry that. And in talking to everybody in the issue, there's actually two main use cases, and one is not more important than the other, so we're going to address both. They want to be able to either retry all failed jobs in this pipeline, or they just want to retry the entire thing as if it was a new pipeline. And so the solution that we have here is for a trigger job, when you try to retry it, you'll have to choose between all jobs or only the failed jobs. But then it will let people do whichever one they want. At the beginning of this call, we had another item that was very similar, actually with the exact same syntax for block. This is for indicating that a job is optional. And what optional means is, so imagine you have a rule on a job. Well, we can use the example that we just talked about, the images one. Say you have a deployment job and you want it to run after the image processing is done, but image processing only runs if there was a change to image. Well, what would happen today is if you added the needs relationship to that image processing job, but then the image processing job didn't run because there was no changes to images, it would say, well, I can't run because I didn't get the thing that I needed. So what this syntax will do is you'll be able to say, for the image processing job, it's optional. So if it existed, then depend on it and wait for it. But if it didn't exist because of rules, well, then just run anyway, just run immediately. So this is really common for use cases like the one that I was just talking about with optional tasks, but also for like a mono repo, where you may have 50 different projects in there. They only run if there's a change, but you still want a deploy job at the end to run that's containing all of the ones that did exist. So that's what this is for. That's what this solves. Allowing needs to refer to a job in the same stage. I think I talked about this one too when we were doing the direction overview, but just to quickly touch on it again. So right now we have a rule that you can't need a job that's part of the same stage. And the reason for that is because of the way basically we inherited it from stage processing, where there's no way for a job to have a dependency on another job in the same stage with stage processing, because they all run simultaneously. Every job in a stage starts simultaneously. When the last job in a stage finishes, then that stage is over and moves on to the next one. Well, with needs, that sort of breaks down, right? Because you're actually defining what the relationships are between jobs. So, Gitlab, we have enough information to say, like, yeah, these are in the same stage, but just one needs to run right after the other. So this is adding that support. And this wasn't in there initially also for kind of iteration reasons. We were trying to make the first MVCs as small as possible and continue iterating, and this is one of those iterations that now adds that. It's not necessarily a complex thing to add this, but yeah, it's another step along the journey. But it will be nice because a lot of people who are using a DAG are they just want to put everything in one stage that's just like the everything stage. Or they may just only have a couple like build and test. And they don't want to have to make a stage for everything that might have to line up into a different column. It just becomes sort of arbitrary and unimportant. So this is a nice user experience fix for people who are using these. Passing CI/CD variables from upstream to downstream does not work for dependent variables. So yeah, this is the one that recently got added. Okay, yeah. So I think this is how I ended up with 31 because it got reopened. But that's fine. Yeah, variables are supposed to be passed from the upstream to the downstream. There's this one use case or this one type of variable that's not being done correctly. So this just fixes that, so those are passed along as well. Right. We had this other issue to have an arbitrary value for parallel jobs. So we have this keyword parallel, which basically works like this. So like you have my job, and then you have all the normal things like whatever script section, you have an image, and then you could say parallel 5, and it would create 5 copies of this job, and it would name each of them. It would also have a special variable inside that's it's like node and index. I can't remember what the names of these are in the documentation, but like there would be like 5 total. So one of the variables would be set to 5, and then the other variable would be set to the number of the job, so either 1, 2, 3, or 4, or whatever. And then using those, you could break work down automatically and process it yourself. But we didn't support an arbitrary variable for those things. But we did recently add the parallel matrix. And I may get the syntax slightly wrong here, but you'll sort of see what I mean. And so you could have debug and release, and then you could have like architectures like x86 and I don't know, ARM. And this would result in 4 jobs: x86 debug, and x86 release, and ARM debug, and ARM release. But what it didn't support, for whatever reason, because we didn't think of it, I guess, and didn't really come up, is something like this, a one-dimensional matrix, which solves what this original person was asking for in terms of an arbitrary value for parallel jobs. So all this is supporting this one-dimensional matrix, and then it will solve this issue, which is a nice way to solve it, and it's cool that we're fixing. We're going to add this. People will also be pretty happy about this.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Quick question about parallel jobs. So, what's the use case for this? Is it to like break up a job into chunks so it can run faster in parallel?
Yes, the parallel keyword itself was designed explicitly for that use case, and really the main one that I think people use it for is tests. If you've got 10,000 tests, and then you have those two variables, and you split it up into 10 jobs, well, those are the numerator and denominator of a fraction. So each one of those knows that they can do 1/10 of the tests. So you can set up the first one to take the first 100. The next one to take the second 100, and you can write that in your script, and then you can parallelize your test in that way, and that's what that was written. And so is Matrix, really. I mean, Matrix is used the same way, although there's a second benefit. I guess the benefit is there for kind of both of them, because you could also do parallel by writing 10 jobs, right? So you could have done like test 1 through test 10, and I think that's how we actually used to do it at GitLab for our own GitLab project. So it helps you not have to write those 10 copies of jobs. So it's sort of the same with this. Instead of writing deploy stacks GCP and deploy stacks Vultr, you can just write this one job, and it multiplies it by 2, passes along this variable so that you can handle it all. But yeah, that's exactly the point of it.
Okay.
This is some intermittent error that's happening with pipeline lint failures. I don't really know too much what's about it, or what's going on, I should say, but this bug is scheduled to look at it because linting is super important and needs to be, if it's run, it should be reliable. Multiple artifact generation per job. I'm not sure that this one will make it because we're having some fairly in-depth technical discussions here. But if it does, and what it is the ability to define multiple sets of artifacts in one job, which there's a lot of great reasons to do that. And we do sort of support it with like things like testing artifacts because they're processed differently. But you can't make 2 sets of artifacts and have them be independent files that are, or independent artifact sets that are part of the release. So if you're doing something like compiling 5 targets with one job, and you wanted to generate 5 separate artifacts, there's actually just no way to do that right now. And so this adds that support. But yeah, I don't know that we'll actually get this one scheduled because it's actually fairly complicated to do that. And we might need to think of a smaller iteration first. But we're trying. Conversations are here and happening. If anyone's interested in jumping in, you'd be welcome. And then last is making it possible to control the build status using Xcode. This was also on the direction page, so I might talk about it a little bit. It's a popular item. People want to just be able to say if my script exits with this particular error code, then treat it as a warning or canceled or whatever instead of a failure. And this would give them the option to do that. Also to redefine what failure is or even success if they really want to go far out there and redefine success as something else, then they could. But this will give a way to have high-level control flow within the pipeline. And I think that's it, actually. That's the 30 items that fit in there. I don't know. So it will all sort of depend on how far the team gets with 13.4. But we planned 13.4 so that there shouldn't be like a lot of extra work at the end. We made it really small so that that would be the case. So if somehow it needs to be really small again, then something really went wrong. But if not, then we should get roughly those 30 items in. We have a shared backlog with Tao, so the team is doing planning right now, which means that all the engineers are looking at all the items that we looked at, which are in the planning breakdown column, which is most of them, I think. And they're adding weights to those and moving them to ready for dev if they're clear. Or if they're not clear, then they're asking questions about them. So over the next week, we will be doing that with engineering. And yeah, then I think on Monday, maybe end of day Friday, I think it's technically due Sunday, they will tell us what fits or not. And so I think most of this will go in there. Anything that doesn't can kind of just slide into 13.6. as a candidate for 13.6 if we still think it's important, or whatever. I guess we just make a decision at that point what to do with everything that didn't make it, and we'll work together on that. These aren't stack ranked yet either, but I always find that popularity, especially for the kinds of things that we're focusing on right now, is a good proxy for that. We're trying to do things that are related to UX improvements that make things better for a lot of people. We're trying to fix bugs that are annoying a lot of people. And those all tend to be reflected by having a decent amount of upvotes. So at the moment, I'm using popularity mainly. But once we get to the end of planning, before we do the commitment, then we'll actually combine the two backlogs and stack rank them so that we get the right things in there. The other thing that we may find is, in terms of planning, is that some item that we thought was small was really large, and then it's not worth doing anymore. So those may get pulled out into 13.6. We may try and break it down. We may just put it back in the backlog and say, like, yeah, it would be nice to do this, but like, it's not worth the effort. But that'll be some individual decision that happens after things are weighted. I always love to do things that are one or two. As many one or two things as possible is always like the recipe for success, I find. As soon as you get anything that's a 4, or even sometimes a 3, it's like, oh, better break that down, or else they tend to get like misdeliverable for like several releases on them. But you know, it's a judgment call on each one, and we'll look at them together as we get closer to the end of planning. All of you are all welcome to jump in on any of those issues, of course. I'm on point for handling all of these technical conversations and everything that are happening, but you're welcome to also participate. Were you going to say something, Doug?
Jason, yeah, this is normally the amount of issues that you have planning, like 30 issues. It seems a lot, especially if we are like stacking them with other, like with Tau. So is it like roughly the number in terms of?
Yeah, the team does about 70 issues per release.
Okay.
So it should add up to be okay. But this is what engineering told us to do. But they're trying to move to waiting, but they haven't quite been able to do that yet. And then it will be more clear. In the meantime, I just try to make sure everything is really as small as possible. Because yeah, I mean, if they said we can do 30 issues and I gave them 30 size 5 issues, then it just wouldn't work. But yeah, based on how we've been delivering, they at the moment they're only able to estimate based on count of issues, and so that's what I'm giving them. But I'm trying to give them as small ones as possible.
Cool. How do you prioritize bugs? By popularity, by severity? What's the rationale that the team is doing?
I don't have a rule. I just look at what it's fixing, and just wait. I just wait. There's only 30 items, and I've been working on these for like a month, so I'm intimately familiar with all of them. So I'm just using my own judgment, rather than saying like I need 7 P2s in this release, and then I need 5 direction items or whatever. I just like look at everything together and then do whatever makes the most sense. Which may be hard when you're new, I understand. But you can look for, I would just look at this 13.5 and then try and like kind of go for a similar blend in upcoming releases. We'll plan 13.6 together as well.
Okay. And the fact that you are prioritizing them by popularity, I mean, obviously the issues that are been there for a while will get like higher votes than the new ones. So it can be a little bit, Do you hear me, Jason?
Yeah, it cut off at the end. It can be a bit and then it cut off.
Yeah, I mean the rationale is like if you go by popularities, then obviously the ones that are been there for a while will get like more votes than the new ones. And having said that, the new ones might be more impactful for our users. So, I mean, how do you balance that?
But I look at both anyway, so it shouldn't matter. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Although I don't know if is it worse to do a few people in a short period of time poorly, or a lot of people over a long period of time poorly. I don't know. I think both are kind of terrible. If a lot of people are upvoting and but you've kind of amortized the pain over a couple of years, I don't know if that's better than. Is that what you're even saying?
No, I'm just saying that the judgment call here by popularity can be biased because, as I said, you have issue for 3 years, you'll have more votes if you have an issue for the past week. You know, how many people had the chance to upvote for an issue that has been here for 1 week versus the amount of upvotes for issues that have been here for 3 years.
It's true, though. Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, it would be worse if you had an issue with 300 upvotes and was a week old versus 300 upvotes and 3 years old.
Yeah, for instance, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's fairly obvious, I think, but yeah, we don't really have that situation where we have issues getting lots of upvotes in a short period of time. We just have ones where we've left people to their own devices for a long time, but it still definitely should be fixed.
Okay.
I guess when you look at the issues, you'll kind of see. When you look at
I guess it's like a case by case, and
it is a case by case, but it's something to be aware of, I guess. Yeah. Cool. So that's 13.5. It's in planning now, and it should be in commitment. I think probably Friday or Monday is when engineering will say they know what has made it or not.
And how do you prioritize the list? Like, what are the top items that you want to put in the high priority, and what are the lower ones that can be slipped?
Typically popularity, like I was saying.
Okay.
For this particular team, it it matches up what I would have otherwise prioritized it as anyway. So it's sort of an easy mode. But when we get to that point, we'll merge backlogs and with Tau. Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jason.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.